Hello and welcome to Through the Telescope, the podcast that puts the lens on astronomy. I'm Rose Waugh and I'm an astrophysicist and science communicator.
And I'm Elliott Bruce, and I'm neither of those things, but I'll be trying to find out why we should even care about astronomy. We'll be exploring some of the big topics in the field in little manageable pieces and have some fun along the way.
So, whether you know your red lines from your red shifts, or you're not quite sure what the difference between astronomy and astrology actually is, join us as we launch ourselves into the cosmos and try not to burn up on re-entry. Through the Telescope is sponsored by Pic Astro, the astronomy and astrophotography image sharing app, dedicated to your images of the cosmos no matter what stage you are on your journey around the universe. No ads, spam, or fake accounts.
So, Rose, today we're talking about observing the night sky without a telescope.
We are indeed.
So, when I'm picturing people observing things in the sky, they definitely got a telescope. Why do we not need a telescope?
Well, having a telescope is definitely going to increase what you can see in the night sky. And a lot of people, once they get into astronomy, after a while, they definitely attempt it, I think, to purchase a small telescope or a good pair of binoculars. Also will do the trick in many cases, but they're not a requirement, right? Humans have looked up at the night sky and been impressed and in awe of what they can see for, as long as we can remember, but they didn't have telescopes until pretty recently.
Actually, related to that, right, sorry for jumping in here, but I went out last night, after our episode on galaxies, which if you've not listened to, you should go back and listen to. And I was thinking, is that the Milky Way up there? Because it's like kind of whitish, like a sort of smudge. Mm-hmm. And then I realised it was just a cloud.
Oh, tragic. Yeah, clouds are the bane of astronomers' lives.
Yes.
Unless you're into radio astronomy, then it's not so much of a problem. But, yeah.
But yeah, I know what you mean. Like, even just like going outside, having a look up at the sky, it's pretty awe-inspiring.
Yeah. Also, going back to what you just said about the Milky Way, a little fact check on the previous episode.
Right.
All the stars that you can see in the night sky are indeed in the Milky Way. So we've cleared that one up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I can observe these stars without a telescope.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, of course you can. You can just go outside, assuming that it's not cloudy.
And not daytime.
And not daytime. And assuming that you have dark enough skies with, the less light pollution you have, the better.
Right.
And that definitely is helpful in allowing our naked eye to pick out a lot of things that otherwise we might miss.
So when you say light pollution, I guess when I am outside and I'm looking up at the sky and there's like a big bright light near my face, I can't really see much, including the sky.
Blinded by the light.
Exactly. But that's not all that is light pollution, right? There's also like just sort of quite distant but bright lights, like a city.
Yeah. So if you happen to find yourself in a place where you can maybe, it's quite easy from the Highlands of Scotland, but it's definitely visible from other places. If you find yourself on a hill or something and you look in the direction of a city, you can see that there's a lot of light pollution that you maybe don't necessarily notice. Even a town, it doesn't have to be very big to cause the light pollution, whereas if you look in the opposite direction, where there hopefully isn't a town, or at least not in this story, then everything is a lot darker, and your view of the night sky is dramatically increased. So yeah, towns and cities definitely create a lot of light pollution. But the moon as well, a full moon.
I do actually. I have got a telescope before, and I remember as a kid my dad getting a telescope, and I could not use it at all. It'd be like I couldn't focus on it. I was looking for things. It'd be like, well, there are some dots there which look like dots. I could find the moon, but that was about it, really. So I'm not going to get a job as an observational astronomer anytime soon, I don't think.
Yeah, they're a bit. They can be a bit tricky to navigate and use. And if, like me, you get cold fingers quite easily, that's not necessarily particularly enjoyable. But some are easier than others for sure.
Mm.
But yeah, and some are quite bulky as well, so they can be quite challenging to just kind of log about or whatever. I mean, they're fantastic, don't get me wrong. I'm not hating on telescopes, but yeah, it's not always as like maybe romantic.
Yeah, I think that's it. You're like, oh, I'm going to get a telescope and I'll be able to look at the stars, and then you start doing it, you're like, I'm straining my eyes now.
Yeah, and I'm really cold, and the clouds are here. It's so weather dependent. Yeah. It is so, and I think a lot of amateur astronomers probably, they understand that the pain or disappointment in my voice there. It's so dependent on the weather. Not to say it's not worth it, because sometimes that means it's more worth it when you've had to wait, so long. But it can be a frustrating hobby.
And if you ever seen the BBC show The Sky at Night, which I've only caught a couple of now and again, they have like a sort of bit where they talk in a studio and they have like filmed segments, and it's like, oh, this is nice. And then they go to some guy that's like, I think they're like in a field somewhere outside London, and this poor guy is like always outside. It's freezing cold, and he's like surrounded by a bunch of amateur astronomers, all with their telescopes, and he says, yeah, well, we're out here, but still no sign of anything just yet. The clouds are above us, but we're still going to hang around for another couple of hours just in case we might see something. Yeah. And I feel like that was, I've only seen like 3 episodes, so maybe they were just
you
like poor sampling.
More.
But
you definitely need to watch more.
I always felt so sorry for that guy.
Yeah.
But if I am able to, if there's no clouds and we've got relatively good light pollution, or
or lack
thereof,
yeah.
What can I see apart from the moon? Because I can pinpoint that one myself.
Good job. Yeah, I'm glad that you can identify the moon. Mm-hmm. Well, quite a lot of the planets in the solar system.
Okay.
So the 5 brightest planets are Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Maybe not unsurprising. The ones that are further out are dimmer, so they can be more difficult to spot. But you can see the planets, generally not all at once.
Yeah, so we've got, so that's 5. We're a 6th one. We can't see ourselves in the sky.
Not in the sky, but you can definitely see Earth.
We can look down. So that leaves 2 more, because we don't like Pluto anymore. So that's which are the Uranus and Neptune. Those are the 2 we can't see.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so far away, not bright enough. So yeah, you can spot them. Mercury can be a bit tricky because its orbit is so close to the sun.
Mm.
So it makes it a bit difficult to spot. So the glare of the sun, you're generally going to see it as the sun is rising or setting, and the glare of the sun also can hide it from view. So yeah, Mercury can be tricky, but it can be seen. And Jupiter and Saturn are both, close enough to be bright and big enough, I suppose. But they're far away enough that they always kind of stay a similar brightness.
Okay.
So, as the planets orbit the sun, they can be, pretty close to us, or they could be very far away when they're on the opposite side of the sun.
Right, yes.
And for Jupiter and Saturn, this difference doesn't really make that much of a difference to what we would see in the night sky. But for Mars, for example, when it's on the opposite side of the sun to us, that's considerably further away from us than if it was on the same side as us. So the brightness of Mars can change quite a lot in the night sky depending on its orbit relative to ours. And if you live somewhere with extremely dark skies and no light pollution from humans or the moon, then you might be able to see Uranus by eye, but it's going to be a very dim point. For most of us, it's not really realistic.
So,
but you're never going to see Neptune.
Sorry, so isn't Uranus like people, at least people in the West or whatever, didn't know that it existed until quite recently, right? Like, it's not
Georgium Sidus.
So when that, like 1700s or something, or early
the
1800s.
George planet.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm wondering is, if you can see Uranus, but only if you've got the best conditions, is that a case of all of these astronomer types, these astronomer royals and such like, are in like London or Rome or somewhere, with their telescopes, and it's not dark enough? Or is it that you can only really see it easily if you know where to look? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because why didn't they just send like some astronomer to like an island in the middle of nowhere and be like, look at the sky and work it out? And I guess they had to look for a planet in the first place, but
work what out? Just the universe.
Just do your job. You need to look at the sky. Don't be in like London or wherever. Like, go and live on like.
Yeah, I mean, I think there were definitely, astronomers going to and sent to places with dark skies, but I think, like many areas of science, astronomy for a long time was, like a gentleman's science.
Right, yeah.
And
they want their nice townhouses.
Yeah. And not every astronomer from history has been necessarily fit into that category, but
it's hard to be
a lot of people, I think, probably did. So
yeah, it's hard to be a goat herd that gets famous for discovering a planet or whatever kind of thing. But no Neptune.
No Neptune.
No Neptune. Well,
poor Neptune.
That's pretty sad.
And no Pluto, who is not a planet, but yeah.
So you told me I can see these planets, right? But I'm guessing I've never really noticed a giant ball with like rings going around it, for instance. So what do these actually look like, and why are they not just, I don't know, what makes them different from like a star or something?
So if you're observing with a telescope, then you're going to see beautiful rings around Saturn and, the red spot of Jupiter. Well, I mean, it's going to depend on your telescope setup, but they're options, right? Things that you might see depending on how good your telescope is. But you're not going to see that with your naked eye.
Right.
You're not going to be like, oh, that one clearly looks like Saturn. That's definitely Saturn. It's got a ring around it, which I think that's how most people would identify Saturn. Stars in the night sky twinkle, which is not actually due to the star. It's due to our atmosphere. But if you're looking up into the sky, then you'll see stars twinkling. Planets do not twinkle. So something that's not twinkling is going to give you an indication that it's a planet. And you can kind of also tell by the colour sometimes.
Okay.
So most stars in the night sky look white. I think we can probably all agree.
Yeah.
There are a few examples of things like red giants, like Betelgeuse, very famous.
Yeah, there's a movie about that.
Yeah, one of my favourites. But most of the time they're white, right? If you spotted Mercury or Venus, then they're also white to the naked eye.
Right, so it's not really...
But Mars is kind of like a reddy orange.
Okay.
I could say kind of, because different people have different interpretations.
Okay. So it's not like it
I
changes
see it as quite
sometimes.
reddy.
Okay, yeah.
But other people see it as like lighter colours.
Right. Okay. That just because it's
So
a
not
light.
to name drop, but I was listening to Chris Lintot's new podcast.
Right, and he is on the Sky
day.
at Night.
He is on the Sky at Night. Yeah. I saw him once in my physics department and I totally fangirled. Yeah.
So why are you
He also
mentioning
atted me,
other...
not atted, but like replied to my tweet once and I like couldn't cope.
Why are you mentioning other
Anyway.
podcasts? Astro podcasts?
Other podcasts are available. My point is, he said that he sees it as like a more of a salmon-y colour, which is quite different from the red that I see. So there is variation,
Right.
but it's on the red end of the spectrum.
Salmon is a particular... Right.
Yeah, Jupiter is kind of like a tanny colour.
Right. So to me, tanny is kind of reddy orange. Right.
Yeah, I suppose. I kind of think of tanny as more
Brown?
kind of yellow than red, which is kind of how I would see a salmon thing.
So
but, anyway,
Is Jupiter brighter than Mars then?
I couldn't tell you the numbers,
Does
but
it
it always
depend
looks
where
it.
it is? Okay.
Mars's brightness does vary quite a lot, so it depends. I'm not sure.
Okay.
And Saturn is yellowish,
Right.
so you can kind of distinguish in some way by colour as well, but not by colour alone.
So I saw a red thing, because when I was outside looking at what turned out to be a cloud, I also saw a red dot,
Right.
which you please know wasn't twinkling, so not a star.
Was it
Wasn't
moving?
moving, so it wasn't a plane.
Not an aeroplane.
Also wasn't flashing, so not a plane. So is that Mars then? Or is that Jupiter?
Well, it could be Mars. It could have been like Betelgeuse or something. I'm not sure, but I imagine. I know you're not an astronomer, but I would like to think that you can identify Betelgeuse.
That is in Orion.
Yeah.
I did not see... I know what Orion looks like. It's like an hourglass, right?
Yeah.
So it was not that, I don't think. I think it was on its own.
Possibly.
So I possibly saw Mars. Maybe.
Possibly. You can also check on things like Stellarium, or presumably other apps / websites are available, but they show you like the night sky, and you can. They're quite immersive. I really enjoy it anyway, and on some of these sites you can kind of like go back in time to like various points and see what the night sky would have looked like. But you can get apps like that and they can tell you exactly what you're looking at.
Right, hang on, right.
So you can be like, oh, is that Mars? And it'll be like, yes, on. No. You know what I mean?
Yeah. When you say go back in time...
Well, it doesn't send you back in time. It shows you the night sky.
I didn't think you were like, you can download an app and it's a time machine. Surprisingly enough. Right, but the sky was different.
Yes.
When?
Well, in some senses, it was different yesterday.
Oh.
I mean, the constellations are the same as yesterday.
But actually...
But the planets move, right?
Right, yeah.
So they move a lot.
Right, yeah.
Okay. And the moon changes. Stuff like that. If you go back, I don't know, a long time, then you find that the constellations also look different.
And that's why they used to look like actual pictures of things?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't put money on that one.
Okay. How far back do we need to go?
A long time. I don't know. I don't know how long it takes for the night sky to evolve significantly for it to be very unrecognizable to you. If you know what I mean.
So that was planets, but what what else am I able to see? We've got the Milky Way, planets, some random stars.
Yeah. You can spot some galaxies, as we talked about in the last episode. You could spot Andromeda. If you're in the southern hemisphere, you could spot the small and large Magellanic Clouds. You could spot constellations. There's loads of things you could spot.
Have you got a favourite constellation?
Yeah, the Orion constellation.
I like Orion too.
I love Orion. It's got Betelgeuse. It's just generally like a pretty funky shape. It's got a nebula that you can see. You can spot that with your naked eye as well if you live in a dark enough place. It kind of looks like a sword hanging from his belt. So if you find the three dots, the 3 stars of his belt, there's like a kind of a fuzzy patch. There's the Orion Nebula. It looks like a sword.
Can you guess what my top 3 constellations are? I think they might be the only 3 that I know.
That you know. Okay, that should give me a clue. So Orion,
yeah.
Cassiopeia.
Yeah, or Cassiopeia as I'd call it.
I know. I specifically chose to pronounce it the other way, just for the variety. Ursa Major?
Yes, but actually not really Ursa Major because just the plough. And I was actually thinking the other day, right? I always thought that Orion was my favourite because it comes out and, during the winter time in the Northern Hemisphere, you're like, oh, hello, it's winter time,
He watches over
hey.
you. It's nice.
Yeah, and he just kind of starts sort of peeking up a little bit, kind of like a bit creepy. He's like, what's up? Just like peeking over, and then before you know it, he's like right there in the middle of the sky. But I was actually thinking, you know what? The plough. Or what's the American call it?
The Big Dipper.
The Big Dipper.
Sorry, can we go in? The Big Dipper. Please do not put my awful...
No, I'm going to put that in.
No, please don't.
Yeah. Would it help if I did one?
No.
Okay. I won't do one.
Don't.
Yeah, because it's there,
Yeah.
You look up in the
constant.
sky and you're like, that's the plough. Hi, plough. It's like your constant friend.
Yeah.
Whereas Orion's like in and out, which is nice because it's like more temporal.
The seasons are changing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough.
And also Cassiopeia looks like a W.
Yeah.
So.
Pretty easy to spot as well.
And out of that comes a woman sitting in a chair.
Yeah. A queen, specifically.
Is it a queen?
Is she not a queen?
I don't know.
Anyway, yeah. So that's your favourite constellation. You could also see Pleiades. It's a stellar cluster. 7 Sisters is what it's also called.
And what is a stellar? I'm guessing it's a cluster of stars.
Yeah. So stars form in nebula.
Right.
Or hydrogen-dense regions.
Right.
In space. And because typically there's a lot of stuff there, it typically makes more than one star.
Right.
So you will get a cluster of stars.
Okay.
They're kind of like, you might hear them referred to as like stellar nurseries.
Are they really close to each other?
Obviously not all clusters are necessarily young now.
So are these clusters like, are they like one, like sort of stellar system? Is it like a sort of 7, I don't know what that would be, a heptanary system?
Oh,
or
right.
Is it just like 7, right, but they're vaguely close to each other because they've come out the same dusty area?
So, I mean, some of them will be like binaries or potentially tertiary systems, which is 3 stars together in an orbit. But a lot of them aren't.
They're just on their own, but near. But not near. So you've got stars, you've got planets.
See the ISS. I like to see the ISS.
Okay.
I know it's not, it's human-made, so it's not quite the same. But there's something very I don't know, kind of comforting and inspiring to me about seeing the ISS. And you can get little, again, apps or whatever to give you notifications when it's coming overhead near where you live.
What does it look like?
But it looks like a white dot that moves across the sky pretty quickly.
Okay.
Actually. Pretty quick.
So does that mean it looks a bit like a sort of meteor or something?
Yeah, kind of, I suppose. And that follows on to, I was going to say you can also see shooting stars. So, yeah.
Which are not stars?
No, they're not. Bits of dust and rock that are in the way of Earth as it moves around its orbit, and they burn up as they enter the atmosphere.
Wow. And that's where life came from.
Some people believe that, yes.
You're not one of those people.
Do I believe in panspermia? Is that what it's called?
I was going to say panspermia, but then I wasn't sure if it was xenospermia.
I don't think it's that one. It's definitely pans, anyway. Well, I think the fact that we've put the word believe in there probably suggests not.
Right.
I don't know enough about where life comes from. I think probably most people can say that, but I'm not. It's not at all my research area. And so I don't feel like I am someone who is able to make a sensible opinion on that question. Maybe it did. It kind of seems unlikely to me as an uneducated person in that topic. But
well, I think it also just kind of moves the question back, doesn't it? Because you're like, where did life come from? The Earth. Well, what if it didn't come from the Earth? It's like, well, where did it come from then?
Yeah.
Like a different Earth, or I don't really know.
Yeah, you're just getting stuck in the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's that stuff about finding like amino acids and things on meteors.
Yeah.
Which is kind of
which
crazy.
is the building blocks of life, as it's often called.
Yeah, although I do wonder how much of that would survive entering the atmosphere and colliding into the ground, for instance.
Yeah, I think that kind of thing has been researched, and you probably can find answers to that kind of thing. I suspect, it seems obvious, but the answer is probably it depends on how big the rock is. So it probably needs to be big enough so that some of it survives, but small enough to not completely destroy a planet.
Right, yeah.
Probably.
That's probably quite important.
I don't know.
Well,
interesting question, though.
You get showers of meteors, don't you?
Yes. You can see quite a few.
Possibly more commonly known as a meteor shower.
Meteor shower, yes.
Are they different times? Because I feel like I always hear, and now there's the meteor shower next week or something.
Yeah, there are about 30 or so spread out throughout the year.
That's like one every 2 weeks.
Yeah, it is. It sounds like a lot, but some are significantly more spectacular than others.
Okay.
So earlier this month in January, we just had the quadrantids.
Apologies if you listen to this episode not in January.
Yes, well, that was why I specified the month. But yes, that's quite a big one.
Quadrantids is not the best name.
No. I'm going to tell you about a couple more, and you can see if you can guess why it's called that.
It was for something, is it?
The Lyrids are in April.
Right.
And the Eta Aquarids.
Right.
You're getting to see how awful my pronunciation is now. Are in May. Right. And the Alpha Capricornids.
Right.
And the Delta Aquarids are in July, and they're all pretty small.
Right, so I'm guessing that, I don't know what the Greek letters are doing, but Aquarids sounds like it's going to be Aquarius, and Capricornids sounds suspiciously like it's Sagittarius. What do the Greek letters do?
I'm not sure what the Greek letters do. I think it's more to do with the section of the constellation.
Okay.
So yeah, if our listeners or you had not yet gathered, they're all named after the constellation that you will see them in.
Right, okay.
Which is quite helpful, because if you know your constellations and you hear, oh, the Perseids are happening in August, then you know where to look.
So that's where they come from. But the constellations can take up a small bit of the sky.
They don't come from the stars in that constellation, but they will pass through that constellation, if that makes sense. So that's where it looks like they start from.
You know what? I heard a thing.
Sense.
Yes. Yeah. So you know star signs?
Yes.
Because this is relevant. So
we're talking about astrology now.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
It's similar, right? So
they've got some letters in common.
So if you're born in something and you've got you're an Aquarius, right?
I'm not. I'm actually a Capricorn.
Well, I can see that from your temperament. So you're a Capricorn, right? The constellation Capricorn is on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
I would have thought you're going to name it after something that is directly above you in the night sky or something, as opposed to the complete opposite side.
Yeah, but also not the complete opposite side, because it's also like out of sync.
Right. Well.
Because the constellations move.
Right.
Yeah, are you asking me to try and rationalise astrology?
To be honest, I think I'm just having a rant about it.
Okay.
But
I'm not sure I can help you here.
Well, no. Just listening, having a space to vent.
Yes, a friendly ear. So there's also the Draconids, Orionids.
Wait,
in October.
I think, is that the Draconids? Because they sound cool.
Yeah.
They got their PR
from the
sorted.
Draco constellation.
Okay.
The Taurids in October.
Okay.
If you're in the southern hemisphere, or in the northern hemisphere, they happen in November.
Right. Okay.
The Leonids in November.
Okay.
And they're again pretty small. Those ones. The Geminids you probably heard of. In December, they're very big. Geminid meteor shower.
Maybe I've heard of the Perseid.
Yeah.
One. I'm not sure about the Geminids.
There's also Ursids.
Right.
In December, and they're pretty small.
Do they come from
by the Geminids?
Do they come from Ursa Major or Ursa Minor?
I couldn't tell you. Possibly both.
Okay.
I don't think their peak is very high. So all the dates that I gave are for this year, for 2023. It does change a little bit.
Okay.
But that's when the peak is. So it's not. There'll be a range of a few weeks in which you can see the meteor shower, and they'll have a peak predicted on a certain, few days.
And how do they predict that peak? Where are they actually coming from? Do you know, like, because they're not coming from Ursa Major or Minor, they're coming from space nearby. But
yeah,
where are they coming from, and how can you actually say it's going to be December on the 15th or something?
Well, I don't run the simulations, but there are bits of space rock and dust in our orbit as we go around.
Right.
And presumably we'd know where they are, because we've been
around it a few times.
And we've been caring about meteor showers for a long time. So we can predict when they're going to be, when we're going to reach them. And we can predict how much stuff you're probably going to see based on how much stuff is there. I think.
Right, so the Perseids and the Geminids, that's like some deep, like we're wading through like thick space. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, I guess so.
Jeez.
So if you look them up, they often will tell you like I don't know if it has a name, but they'll give a prediction on like however many per hour.
Jeez.
And for some of the big ones, it's like, like 150 per hour. And then some of the small ones, it'll be like 5 an hour at its peak.
So you mentioned some of the northern and the southern hemisphere at different times. So can you see all of these in both hemispheres? Or at different times? Or are some of them stuck to actually, do all of these constellations appear in is that the important bit? Do you need to know whether you can see Capricorn or not?
Yeah.
So these mostly northern hemisphere because
I think
that's
so.
how science is dominated.
That is how science is dominated, yes. But also I am in the northern hemisphere.
You are?
So when I went to find a list of when they are this year...
Right.
I got this list from the Royal Observatory in Greenwich.
Right. And they weren't that interested in people that might be listening in Madagascar or Bolivia?
Presumably not. I don't know. I guess a lot of the people that they communicate with are in the Northern Hemisphere and specifically in Britain, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's more fair when it's like to the Royal Observatory or whatever, talking to the the nation at large. But yeah,
Well, maybe we could find when some of the Southern Hemisphere ones are. Put it in the notes for the podcast.
Yeah.
The show notes.
Yeah, which we
Sorry
need
for
to
the
get round
clinking
to.
of my tea. That's probably going to show up.
That's okay. I think people can appreciate tea. I think having a hot beverage is a very astronomy thing, in a way,
Yeah. I think hot chocolate is the preferred drink, which is...
I think we've already established that we're
Not
really that keen on hot chocolate as a beverage. Well, so we've gone through, planets, stars and constellations, little stellar clusters, meteor showers. Have I missed anything? Oh, the ISS.
Yeah, got a little shout out there.
Yeah.
Think about everything we talked about. So I am quite excited about this part 2 because I think it's really cool. I can't believe I'd never heard of them.
So it turns out we all know what a constellation is, right? It's a bunch of stars that you draw some lines between them, and then it turns out that's a crab, apparently, and away you go. Fine. But it turns out you also get dark cloud constellations, which are pretty cool. So the idea behind these is that you get, whilst in the previous episode we talked about the white splodge that is the Milky Way, you actually get some dark patches within that. You get variations.
Yeah.
And so instead of sort of drawing or seeing shapes within the dot-to-dot picture, like you're a 5-year-old, you actually look at the shape of the dark patches within the white sort of background of the Milky Way. And this is apparently particularly possible in the southern hemisphere for astronomy reasons.
They have better skies.
Yeah. Now, I have heard of one of these before, which is the emu.
Yes.
Which I think it's from Australia. I think it was indigenous Australian. And so what you can see if you look for the emu constellation is actually you can draw an emu from the dark lines of cloud within the Milky Way. No stars included. And it's not just indigenous Australians that have done this. It's also been seen by the Inca So there's a quite nice one, which I'm not sure if it's actually the same spot as the emu or if it's a different spot. But there's a llama. And it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of nice.
It's a nice symmetry.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to see in the sky, and it doesn't just have to be dots. And to be honest, I can way more see a shape here than a random dot to dot, which has no bearing on the picture.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest. The emu doesn't look much like an emu to me, and I could equally see it being a llama. But it has got that kind of shape to it. It turns out there is more similarity in shape between an emu and a llama than I might have originally thought if you just, stopped me in the street and told me that.
Yeah, I guess.
But there is a lot. It looks much more clearly like an emu or a llama than any of the constellations that are, dot to dot style.
Yeah.
That don't. Okay, I mean, the plough looks pretty accurate to its name, I suppose, but most of the others don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's just something very, like you say, there's something very lovely about it, just that it's appreciating all bits of the night sky.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's, you don't just have to look at stars or even like nebulae or whatever, smudges.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of beauty and patterns that you can see in all parts of the sky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I suppose it's all about the contrast, isn't it? In some bits of the sky, it's very dark except for a few stars, and so that's where you find your picture. Whereas if you're looking more into the part of the sky that contains the Milky Way, kind of the obvious bulge of the Milky Way, the milky bit, if you like, then the contrast comes from the dark bits.
Yeah.
That's the different bit.
I think also like the Milky Way looks really cool.
Yeah.
Whereas stars are just dots at the end of the day. Like if you look at the Horsehead Nebula or something like that, or the Crab Nebula, it's all like the sort of cloudy, swirly, like
The dust.
Yeah, that looks cool, like super cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's going to be on an astro calendar.
Because dust is like the bane of your life when you're a scientist, or as an astronomer anyway.
You don't just need to be an astronomer to hate dust, but
in my professional life, it gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah.
And in my personal life, I just don't like it.
Fair. Yeah. At least you're not allergic, but yeah.
That's true.
But yeah, these dark cloud constellations are within the Great Rift, which sounds cool.
Yeah. It's a great name, isn't it?
Yeah. Apparently the Greeks, they've got their noses in everything, haven't they? The ancient Greeks, they also were able to see the Great Rift and say, oh, there's some dark bits. But they didn't mention any animals. I'm not surprised that they didn't mention emus or llamas, given that they're not native to Greece.
We can forgive them for that, but they didn't make beautiful pictures in the sky out of them. They just noticed that it's there. They missed a trick.
Yeah. But it's definitely worth having a look at some of the images because they are like nice and they do actually look like things, I think.
Yeah. Dark cloud constellations.
It's not just bright spot constellations.
So, as usual, feel free to contact us on social media. Share your favourite constellation or dark cloud constellation with us. And we'll see you next time.
So that just about wraps things up for this episode. Please, can we encourage you to subscribe to Through the Telescope wherever you find your podcasts, and if you like, you can leave us a nice positive review as well. It really helps the show and it makes it easier for more people to find us.
Feel free to send us any comments, questions, or suggestions of things or people you'd like to hear about or from in future episodes. Or perhaps to put yourself forward to chat about your own astro research or experiences. As always, you can find us on Instagram at Through the Telescope Podcast, or you can find me at astrophysicist_Rose. You can also find us on Twitter at The Telescope Pod, and you can contact us by email at throughthetelescopepodcast@gmail.com.
And with that, we'd like to thank you very much for listening, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.
Bye.
Bye.